Hey, hurry up and show us the way. How long do you plan to keep us waiting? One man, speaking in German, was barking orders at the receptionist, Nina. She bit her lip and cast her gaze downward. Her short bangs fell over a scar on her forehead. Today was a big day for our company, as we were showcasing our new product to companies from around the world. But the lack of proper guidance had turned the reception area into a chaotic scene. All around, voices in different languages echoed complaints. Serves you right. That's what happens when a monster tries to act like a human. Nina's sister, who had just arrived, sneered with a twisted smile. Nina, her face pale, started to tear up. Someone needed to guide the people gathered here. Ideally, someone who could speak all the languages of those present. I took a step forward, taking a deep breath. To protect Nina from anything that might harm her. The company where I, Tyler, had recently joined was a medical equipment manufacturer and supplier with a broad overseas client base. The department I was assigned to was headed by Rose, the daughter of Mr. Hawkins, the company president. She was beautiful and highly competent, but her tendency to rely on her status as the president's daughter was her one major flaw. Tyler, didn't you graduate from that university known for producing top talent? And yet you can't handle even this basic task? I could have done it faster myself. I had just handed in some presentation materials for our upcoming product, and that was the feedback I received. Sorry, I'm still getting the hang of things. That's no excuse. As a mid-career hire, you should know you're expected to be an immediate asset. Rose, clearly irritated, wound a strand of her red hair around her finger. I looked away from Rose, scanning the office around me. But the other senior employees were focused on their own work, not even glancing my way. I realized, after 2 weeks here, that no one wanted to invite Rose's criticism, and was too busy perfecting their own tasks to have any energy left to help a newcomer. I returned to my desk, sighed softly, and began correcting the data Rose had pointed out earlier. Get it together. Rose's voice, much harsher than what I had experienced, rang sharply through the office. I looked up to see Nina standing where I'd been earlier. Our eyes didn't meet, but I quickly shifted my gaze back to my computer screen. Nina was Rose's older sister. That made her a daughter of the president as well. But unlike Rose, Nina struggled with her work. She also had an air of gloom about her. Her bangs were long enough to nearly cover her eyes, and she often looked down. We occasionally spoke out of necessity for work, but she mumbled so much that she was hard to understand. Perhaps because of this, Rose treated Nina quite cruelly. Despite being the elder sister, Nina never talked back, quietly accepting whatever Rose said. Given her unapproachable vibe and the risk of drawing Rose's ire if anyone got too close to her, no one really talked to Nina. I was no exception. With Rose's scolding of Nina in the background, I continued my work in silence. This was becoming a regular occurrence. Then, one day, I made yet another careless mistake, sparking Rose's anger once again. Absolutely useless. I can't believe you have such a prestigious background. Fine, just go organize the documents. Handed a large pile of unsorted files, I dejectedly made my way to the filing room. There, numerous files stored previous employees' estimates and sales records. As I wondered why I, of all people, was stuck with this menial task, I shook my head in frustration. No. I promised myself I wouldn't let arrogance like that creep in again. Determined to start fresh, I opened the door to the archive room, only to see someone peeking out from between the shelves. It was Nina. Seeing her here surprised me, but I managed to swallow back the startled noise that almost escaped my lips. Are you looking for something? Oh, no, I wasn't here to find anything. Rose just told me to do some organizing. Oh, I see. Nina quickly withdrew her face from view. I noticed that she, too, seemed to be sorting through documents. In the back of the room, the work table was piled high with papers and files. leaving me only the space beside her to set down my documents and search for files to use. Even though I thought it was odd to still be keeping paper records in this day and age, it was apparently Mr. Hawkins' policy. Having both digital and physical copies ensured that information was accessible even if one format became unavailable. I sorted the documents Rose handed me into proposals, estimates, and contracts, filing each in its designated place. After 2 hours of this, my concentration was fading. I glanced over at Nina, who was steadily and silently organizing her documents without so much as a glance in my direction. She seemed suited to this kind of quiet, detailed work. With that thought, I got up to return the completed files. But the weight of the file caught me off guard, and my legs, a bit unsteady from sitting, gave a small wobble. I stumbled, bumping into Nina's desk, scattering her neatly piled documents across the floor. Sorry. Setting down my files, I hurriedly began gathering the papers from the floor. Still, my actions didn't change the fact that I had disrupted her work. There was no undoing this mistake. Let me help you organize. So, how are you sorting these? Oh, I was organizing the meeting minutes by topic. By topic? You're doing all that? Rose's orders. Organizing by topic meant she'd have to read through each document. An obviously time-consuming task. I immediately recognized it as another one of Rose's ways of making things difficult for Nina. Realizing I'd likely be working overtime if I helped her, I tried not to sigh. Oh, actually, I'll be fine. If I know the year and which meeting it was, I can sort them without reading them. Without reading them? Wait, you've memorized it all? The agendas, at least. Okay, then, what about this one, second meeting of 2015? I pointed to a random meeting record, and Nina's expression tightened with focus. That was the meeting where we decided to host a trade show in Luxembourg. Checking the minutes, I found she was exactly right. Impressed, I looked at Nina, who quickly blushed and lowered her head. I can do this myself, so you should go back, Tyler. Rose will get mad at you. True, but since I'm the one who messed up the papers, let me help. We'll get done faster if we work together, right? But, ignoring her hesitation, I began sorting through the documents. I opened a meeting record to check its contents. That one is for the charity project. Please place it here. Following Nina's instruction based on the title she had glanced at, I set it where she indicated. Seeing me reach for the next document, Nina seemed to give up on insisting otherwise. Tyler, tell me the year and the meeting number, and I'll let you know the agenda. Got it. Alright, 2021, fourth meeting. That one's also about the charity project. While she answered, Nina continued sorting through the documents in front of her. I couldn't help but feel more impressed as she multitasked effortlessly, and I got back to my own work. What I thought would take over an hour ended up only taking 30 minutes, and I even helped with the rest of Nina's work. We managed to finish everything before the end of the day, and I let out a relieved breath. Thank you so much. You even helped with my remaining work. Don't worry about it, think of it as an apology. Besides, I had the wrong impression about you, Nina. The wrong impression? Yeah. Since Rose was always scolding you, I assumed you weren't good at your job. But you remember all the meeting minutes and could give me directions while doing your own work. You've got some real talent. And I only looked at the surface. I'm really sorry. I saw Nina's eyes widen beneath her bangs. And then she laughed softly. No need to apologize for that, but thank you. Nina's smile, which I saw for the first time, was incredibly radiant. I felt an overwhelming urge to keep seeing that smile of hers. I realized I'd fallen for Nina. Maybe it's simple, but I can't suppress this fluttering in my chest. I wanted to get closer to her. With that in mind, I decided to start talking to her more from the next day. Good morning, Nina. When I greeted her, Nina yelped, "Ah," and turned to face me with a blush. Realizing it was me, she let out a small sigh of relief. Her reaction, like a startled little animal, made me want to protect her even more. "Good morning. You really shouldn't talk to me too much. Rose will get mad." Nina looked around, noticing that a few employees were casting curious glances our way. Rose hadn't arrived at the office yet. She always showed up right at the start of the workday. Besides, I didn't mind if Rose saw us talking. I'm used to her scolding me. More importantly, I'd like to get to know you better, Nina. How about we have lunch together? Well, I brought my own lunch. So did I. Nina blushed deeper, hesitated for a moment, and then slowly nodded. Inwardly, I cheered. Hey, you too. It's time to start working. Get to it. I looked up to see Rose, who had just walked in, glaring at us with narrowed eyes. By the way, didn't you two take a suspiciously long time on those files yesterday? Oh, that's because Tyler helped me with my work. Of course he had to help. You're useless at everything, Nina. It's embarrassing to have someone like you as my sister. Nina lowered her head, clearly hurt by Rose's harsh words. Angered by her comment and seeing Nina's downcast face, I stepped in front of her, shielding her from Rose. That's not true. Yesterday, I accidentally messed up Nina's documents, and the only reason we finished on time was because of her skills. She has memorized all the past meeting records and managed to guide me through while doing her own work. She's actually an incredible asset. I raised my voice enough for the other employees listening around us to hear. Rose, clearly caught off guard by my response, stood there speechless for a moment. She then furrowed her brows, twisting a strand of her red hair around her finger. She's memorized all the meeting minutes? I can't even do that. There's no way Nina could. Alright, Nina, what was the agenda for the 32nd meeting last year? It was whether or not we would sponsor the upcoming World Swimming Championship, which is this year. One of the employees nearby reacted to Nina's answer. Ah, I remember that meeting, I was there. Let me see, yes, it really was the 32nd meeting from last year. Hearing this, the other employees started murmuring. That was just a coincidence. It's not unusual to remember last year's agenda. Alright, then, Nina, how about the 27th meeting from 1992? It was about strategies for securing contracts with a major Japanese corporation. The same employee confirmed this was correct, and cheers erupted across the office. Nina has a talent like that? To remember everything? I wouldn't remember even after 10 years. Nina, that's amazing. Nina seemed to shrink with embarrassment as she was praised by her colleagues. Just then, Fiona from our department approached Nina. Nina, could you help me with something? I'm in charge of setting up the company's trade show next month. And I wanted to look at past documents for reference. But finding the right meeting minutes is a challenge. Especially since the internal data doesn't support content searches yet. Oh, but I'm not sure if. I gently placed a reassuring hand on Nina's shoulder as she hesitated. You just need to share what you remember. You'll be fine. Nina looked up at me and, after a moment, nodded resolutely. Then she headed to Fiona's desk with her. As they walked away, I noticed Rose glaring sharply at Nina's back. Hold on, Nina. Now, Rose, no need to interfere with work. You were the one telling her to work, weren't you? With a light nudge, Rose bit her lip in frustration. Before spinning around and stomping back to her desk. Lunch break. As promised, I had lunch with Nina. As we opened our lunch boxes in the break area, Nina gave me a small smile. Fiona was so grateful to me. I'm glad I could help. It made me really happy. I found myself admiring how beautiful Nina looked in that moment. Just then, she looked up. Her eyes meeting mine directly from beneath her bangs. Thank you for encouraging me at that time, Tyler. If I'd been alone, I would have run away. I wouldn't have felt this happy. I'm glad you're happy, Nina. My face softened naturally as I spoke, and Nina, blushing, looked down and resumed eating quietly. Hey, Nina, would you mind if we had lunch together again tomorrow? Well, I don't think I'd make good company for lunch. I don't know. I'm really enjoying my meal right now. And, Nina, you should stop saying things like I'm not much. I told you I want to get closer to you, right? That's how special you are. As I spoke, Nina finished her meal and took a sip of her hot tea. Then, she looked at me, studying my face as if to gauge my sincerity. As I grew nervous under her gaze, she finally opened her mouth to speak slowly. I also enjoyed having lunch with you, Tyler. If you'd like, I'd be happy to eat together again tomorrow. Great. Looking forward to it, Nina. Suppressing the urge to jump for joy, I nodded enthusiastically at her. Since Nina started getting recognition, the office atmosphere had brightened. With her helping out, everyone had more time to assist each other and even chat about non-work topics, making the environment more relaxed. You know, we haven't had a welcome party for Tyler yet. Someone mentioned, likely prompted by the cheerful shift in the workplace. Before I knew it, my welcome party was being organized. Today's the day. At a bar that's apparently a favorite for holiday parties, everyone was waiting for me to give a toast. Once the greetings settled down, Nina took a seat beside me. Cheers, just between us, Nina said, holding out her glass of beer. I clinked mine against hers, producing a clear, resonant sound. Nina took a hearty sip of her beer. Nina, I didn't know you could drink alcohol. Well, being around you, Tyler, makes me feel more relaxed, so I guess the real me comes out. That's an honor, I replied, causing her to smile warmly. Her words made my heart race. She feels relaxed around me. That has to mean she trusts me, right? Does she like me too? I glanced over at Nina, but she was entirely focused on a plate of chicken wings. Shaking off my wishful thinking, I took another sip of my beer. Nina, pass me some too. Sure thing, she replied cheerfully, handing a dish over to Fiona. Nina, you've really opened up. You're like a different person from when I first joined. Hee, you think so? Nina, looking embarrassed, fidgeted with a nearby plate, which only made her even more endearing. As I admired her, Rose took a seat directly across from us. She'd mentioned she'd be late, so I assumed she'd just arrived. With a scowl on her face, Rose glared at us, twirling a lock of her red hair around her finger. Rose, how are you? I greeted her, trying to be polite, but she didn't respond. Lately, her mood had been sour. With fewer mistakes in the office, she had no one to vent her frustrations on. And even Nina had started standing up for herself whenever Rose's comments crossed the line. Rose seemed increasingly irritated, probably because her usual outlet was gone. I decided to let her be and turned back to my conversation with Nina. Nina was also concerned about Rose, but she would look at me if I broached some subject. And that simple gesture made me happy. Watching us intently, Rose suddenly smirked and picked up a glass with some melted ice left over from someone's drink. Tyler, you seem to be fond of Nina. But I wonder if you'll still feel that way once you know her true self. In an instant, Rose flung the contents of the glass at Nina. The cold water splashed so forcefully that a few drops even hit me. Nina, are you all right? I grabbed a napkin and leaned in to check on her. But then I froze at what I saw. Her bangs, always covering her eyes, were wet and stuck flat to her forehead. That's why I could see it. I see a big scar there. The entire room fell silent as everyone else noticed it too. Rose's smug grin widened as she took in our reactions. See that scar? Isn't it hideous? That's Nina's real face. A tear fell onto Nina's hand, which rested on her lap. She stood up abruptly, head down, and dashed out of the bar. "Nina!" I hurried after her, leaving behind Rose's triumphant laughter. Nina was running through the bustling city streets at night. She ran off without even apologizing after bumping into someone. The person she bumped into, noticing the scar on her forehead, shouted angrily after her, "Apologize, you monster." I wanted to hit him but swallowed my anger, knowing that catching up to Nina was more important. Eventually, Nina reached a deserted park and stopped there. I slowly approached her as she stared blankly at the moths fluttering around a streetlight. Hearing footsteps, Nina looked in my direction. Through her messy bangs, the scar on her forehead was clearly visible. Realizing this, she gave a self-deprecating smile and brushed her bangs back into place. "You followed me. Then you must have heard it earlier. I'm a monster, a hideous monster." Nina sat down on a bench illuminated by the streetlight. Small, round spots began forming on the ground. "Lately, people have been treating me well, and I got carried away. I was so happy to be useful to someone. To hear people say they wanted to be friends with me, that I thought as long as I kept this scar hidden, I could be just like everyone else." I gently touched her hand as she gripped her bangs tightly. "What are you saying, Nina? You're an ordinary person." "No, you're not ordinary. You're a truly lovely and captivating woman." Nina looked up, startled. Her tear-filled eyes sparkled in the streetlight like stars. I tenderly unclasped her fingers from her tightly held bangs. Nina didn't resist. "Even with this scar? The scar doesn't change who you are, Nina." Holding her released hand, I knelt before her, one knee on the ground, looking up at her as she sat on the bench. "I like you, Nina. I want to protect you from anything that might hurt you." Nina grasped my hand tightly and began to cry again. "I like you too, Tyler. When I'm with you, I feel safe and brave. You were the first to say you wanted to be friends with me." As she blushed with tear-streaked cheeks, I gently embraced her. Encouraged by her acceptance, I stroked her hair and then kissed her forehead. Nina smiled softly through her tears. "Tyler, there's something I want to tell you. It's about this scar." Only the moths drawn to the light and I heard the secret she began to share. The next day, when Nina came to the office, her appearance caused a stir. She had cut her bangs short, revealing her large forehead scar and her determined, sparkling eyes. "Good morning, Nina. You look refreshed." "Good morning, Tyler." "Yeah, I feel great." As we exchanged cheerful smiles, the murmurs in the office quieted down a bit. "What are you all staring at? It's time to start work." Rose walked over, her voice sharp, then stopped in her tracks, eyes wide in surprise as she looked at Nina. Then, she burst into laughter, clutching her stomach. "Oh, wow! Look at you. What's with this look? Deciding to flaunt your flaws, are you?" "I'm not flawed." Nina's firm response made Rose stop laughing. "Ha? Have you even looked in a mirror? Oh, wait, you're a monster, so I guess mirrors don't show your reflection, huh?" "Rose, that's enough." I couldn't hold back any longer and stepped in. Seeing this, the other employees began to gather around us. "Yeah, that was uncalled for, Rose. Just because you're the boss's daughter doesn't mean you can say anything you like. What does a scar matter? It doesn't affect her work." Faced with the chorus of disapproval from her co-workers, Rose faltered. Well, everyone, like Rose said, it's already time to start work, so let's get to it, okay?" When Nina said that, everyone dispersed reluctantly back to their desks. Though some who often got help from Nina glared at Rose before returning. Thought you'd save the day? Don't get cocky." Twisting a strand of her red hair around her finger, Rose turned her back on us. "Nina, starting today, you'll be working at the reception desk." A few days after Nina cut her bangs, Rose suddenly made this announcement. Nina's eyes widened in surprise. Reception. Me? Why? I asked my father to assign you there so you could practice showing off that hideous scar to the public. You should be grateful. Rose crossed her legs and sneered. Seeing her attitude, I and the other employees frowned. Rose, this is a problem. Nina is an important member of this department. No matter how much Nina has brightened up recently, isn't this a bit extreme? Be quiet. This is a direct order from the boss. Rose's harsh slap on the desk silenced everyone. But the cold stares remained. To cut through the tension, Nina stepped forward. I'll be fine, so don't worry. Like Rose said, I'm still not used to talking to people outside this department. So I'll see it as practice and give it my best. Though none of us liked it, we accepted it for Nina's sake. Unable to focus on work out of concern, I went to check on her during lunch. She looked surprisingly good in the reception uniform, but anyway. Nina, how's it going? Has anyone said anything unpleasant? Oh, Tyler. You're worried about me? Thanks, but I'm fine. It's only been half a day, I'm not worn out yet. Her amused smile made me chuckle despite myself. At first, the visitors were startled by my scar, but I think they'll get used to it soon. I've already remembered the faces and names of the people who came by earlier, so I think I'll be able to assist more smoothly next time. If they come to know me as someone who can work well, even with a scar, I think they'll eventually accept me, just like you all do. Relieved to see Nina standing tall and confident, I nodded. Now, let's get to lunch. Nina briefly went to the back and returned with her lunchbox. As we headed to the break room, we encountered Rose, standing firmly in our path. So far, so good, I see. But it's only been half a day. Let's see how long that dutiful attitude lasts. With that, Rose turned on her heel and walked away. I stood there in disbelief as Nina tightened her grip on her lunchbox, watching Rose's retreating figure. The product exhibition that Fiona had planned, with Nina's help, was coming up next week. Our department was busy with preparations for the large-scale event in the company's main hall, which would welcome visitors from many countries, not just English-speaking regions. The purpose this time was to engage with regional businesses renowned for their innovative techniques and development, rather than major companies. So we hoped to make a good impression by speaking their languages. I studied a bit of Chinese in college, so I can manage at a beginner level. Nina murmured during lunch, a hint of nervousness in her expression. Don't worry. We've prepared multilingual brochures, so you just need to hand them out. You're right. You, Fiona, and the rest of you have worked hard to prepare for this exhibition, so I'll do my best too. Her enthusiastic gesture, clenching both fists as if to pump herself up, was so cute that I couldn't resist giving her a hug. She blushed immediately. And so, the day of the exhibition arrived. Fiona, the lead organizer, was busy running around since early morning. Just bring these brochures to the reception area, right? I'll take them. Perhaps overwhelmed by the bustling environment, even Rose decided to help with the menial tasks, carrying a box of brochures out of the room. Before long, it was time for the reception to begin. I had reassured Nina, but I couldn't shake the worry, so I decided to check on her. The entrance was bustling with people. Voices in English, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, German, and Arabic filled the air. Every language carried undertones of frustration, making me frown. Navigating through the crowd, I finally reached Nina at the reception desk. She looked pale and was visibly flustered. Nina, what's wrong? Oh, Tyler. For a moment, relief flickered across her face, but then she looked as though she was about to cry. The brochures haven't arrived, and we've already started the reception. I don't know what to do. I glanced at the reception desk in shock. There were indeed no brochures. Rose had said she'd bring them. Well, isn't this a shame? Turning toward the voice, I saw Rose smirking with satisfaction. She held nothing in her hands. Rose. Where are the brochures? I left them with someone else who offered to bring them over. So, I'm not responsible, she said with an indifferent shrug. You brought this on yourself, trying to act like a normal person when you're not. Consider this a lesson. Anger surged within me at Rosa's words and behavior. But seeing the tears welling up in Nina's eyes, my anger faded, replaced by a resolve to fix this situation. Without the brochures, someone needed to guide the crowd gathered here. Someone who could speak all these languages. Hurry up! How much longer do you expect us to wait? A man in the crowd yelled at Nina in German. Nina bit her lip, lowering her head. Her shortened bangs fell to cover her beautiful eyes. I stepped forward and took a deep breath. I'll be your guide. Please follow me, I announced in German, loud enough to be heard across the entrance. The man yelling at Nina blinked in surprise. Oh, so there's someone who speaks German. Then, please guide us. What did you just say? As I started leading the German visitors, a woman pushed forward, demanding an explanation in Chinese. I said I'd guide you. Please follow along. I replied in Chinese, then repeated the same instructions in Japanese, Korean, and Arabic. The complaints filling the entrance immediately ceased. Nina, leave them to me. You handle the English-speaking guests. Nina looked up at me, stunned, and after a moment, nodded firmly before returning to her work. I then focused on guiding our international visitors in various languages. The exhibition ended up being a huge success. Apparently, we even closed more deals than usual. It's all thanks to Tyler's guidance. Thank you. I had no idea you were multilingual. Fiona praised me, and the other employees nodded in agreement. Embarrassed, I could only smile awkwardly. After my initial reception duties, several foreign guests had specifically requested I explain the products to them. So I'd been assisting them the entire time. Switching between 5 languages was exhausting, but seeing everyone's satisfaction made it all worthwhile. What's going on here? Who are you, exactly? Just then, Rosa's shrill voice cut through, her expression sharp as she glared at me. In response, I merely shrugged. What do you mean, who am I? I'm just the same useless employee you already know, Rose. Don't lie. You can speak all those languages. Why would such a skilled person? Skilled, huh? Her words made me look up at the ceiling, lost in thought. I used to believe I was skilled too. I was always top of my class as a student. I could pick up other languages quickly. So, when I landed a position at a top company, I thought, of course, they would want someone like me. And with that attitude, I worked there for 5 years. You went to the same college as me, right? Yet you can't even handle such basic tasks? Honestly, I could have done it faster myself. I coldly handed back the data that my junior, Tate, had submitted. Sorry, I'm still getting used to the work. That's no excuse. The fact that you went to the same university and work here embarrasses me as your senior. Tate, trying to hold back tears, returned to his desk. A few co-workers gathered around him, trying to comfort him. I scoffed, thinking they were wasting their time on someone so useless when they could be working. Looking back, maybe my attitude made me pay for that later. One day, I was assigned to lead an event for the company. Since the event required someone who could handle multiple languages, they chose me. But the task of planning an event wasn't my strength. You there, you're free, aren't you? Take over this task for me. I spoke to Tate, who I had dismissed before. But almost immediately, other co-workers stepped in, blocking my path. You know, you've been full of yourself for a long time. Just because you're good at your job doesn't mean you can act this way. We're not helping him out. Let him figure it out himself. They led Tate away, leaving me behind. I tried asking others for help, but nobody wanted to deal with me. "Oh, talented Tyler can handle it all alone, right?" they'd sneer. In the end, I scraped together a plan by myself, but it was so poorly received in the proposal stage that I was removed from the project. Tate took over, built the plan with everyone's support, and the event was a huge success. It wasn't until my pride was shattered that I realized how arrogant I'd been. But it was too late. Everyone was already fed up with me, and from that failure onward, I faced blatant coldness from my coworkers. There was no chance for redemption. Feeling like I couldn't stay in that company any longer, I left. And then I joined this company, vowing never to let my pride get the best of me again. Tyler? Nina's voice pulled me back to the present. She held my hand in both of hers. Her warmth chased away the chill of those old memories, filling my heart with warmth again. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you, Tyler. No, like I told you, I want to protect you from anything that might hurt you. I'm so glad I could be here for you. As I squeezed her hand in return, Nina's cheeks flushed as she smiled brightly. Relishing in that smile, I turned back to face Rose, who was gritting her teeth. Rose, you didn't hand the brochures to someone else, did you? I found the box hidden at the back of the archives room. Rose's face turned pale as she glanced around nervously. The other employees were all looking at her with disdain. Cornered on all sides, Rose started nervously twisting a strand of her red hair around her finger. And then, Nina stepped forward to stand in front of Rose, shielding her. There's no proof that Rose did it, right? Maybe the person she entrusted with the task hid it. No, Nina. Someone saw Rose carrying the box into the archives this morning. That's pretty solid evidence. At my words, Nina pressed her lips together tightly. Behind her, Rose shoved Nina aside, irritation plain on her face. Fine, yes, it was me. But Nina, you're always like this. Just because you're my sister, you think you can show me this protective attitude? Don't you get how much that bothers me? I can't stand feeling like you're looking down on me all the time. Sorry. Nina's voice was small as she looked away apologetically. Rose, only more agitated, glared even harder. Always hanging your head like that. It's so infuriating. How does someone bloomy like you, with that ugly scar, get more recognition than me? Rose, stop talking about Nina's scar like that. Oh, shut up. It's ugly, no matter how you look at it. Can you really say that, knowing that scar came from her protecting you? Rose gasped, her expression freezing in shock. Nina's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Tyler, please, don't bring that up. No, Nina. This needs to be said. Otherwise, Rose's arrogance and condescension toward others won't change. Nina opened her mouth, but no words came out. What are you talking about? That scar came from protecting me? Explain it to me. Rose demanded, her voice breaking. Nina seemed to make up her mind. Turning to face Rose directly. Rose, you don't remember. I never wanted you to know. I thought if you found out, you'd end up blaming yourself for taking Mom's life. Nina began to speak hesitantly, sharing the story of how she got her scar. Nina was 6 years old when Rose was born. When Rose was born, her hair was red. Neither side of Nina's family had anyone with red hair. Perhaps that was why Nina's paternal grandfather was furious. You cheated, didn't you? A child with red hair can't be my son's. That's impossible. Silence. That red hair is proof enough. Nina's mother denied it desperately, but her grandfather wouldn't listen. Nina's father, Mr. Hawkins, tried to intervene, but whenever he wasn't around, her grandfather would harass her mother. Divorce her. Or better yet, don't divorce, just abandon that child somewhere. What? How could you say that? I would never abandon my child. Nina overheard these arguments from the next room. Rose, who was still a baby, woke up from the noise and began crying loudly. Then, Their grandfather entered the room. Looking down at her with hawk-like eyes, he terrified young Nina. "Enough, be quiet." He picked up a nearby vase and threw it toward Rose. Instinctively, Nina threw herself in front of Rose to protect her. The edge of the vase struck Nina's forehead, leaving a large scar. She was taken to the hospital immediately. Fortunately, there was no brain injury. But she was told the scar on her forehead would remain for life. "I'm so sorry, Nina." The incident weighed so heavily on their mother that, already weak from childbirth, she never recovered. When Mr. Hawkins learned of the incident, he was furious. He forced his father into early retirement, becoming the company's president, and banned his father from having any influence over either the company or the family. When Nina finished speaking, Rose's tears spilled over. "Rose, you've done nothing wrong. The color of your hair has nothing to do with infidelity. Dad later discovered that he had a Scottish ancestor in his family line. That red hair is simply a genetic throwback. So, don't blame yourself. There's no need to cry." Rose shook her head fiercely. "No, that's not why I'm crying. Learning what happened, I realize it was much harder for you than for me. I don't remember Mom. And her absence just felt normal because you were there for me like a mother. I never felt lonely. But it wasn't like that for you, was it? You remember Mom, don't you? You had every right to hate me, thinking I took her away from you. But instead, I treated you terribly without even knowing any of this." Sobbing, Rose was gently pulled into Nina's embrace. Rose's tears flowed even more freely. "I'm so sorry, Nina. I called you ugly, I mocked you, and I'm so sorry." As Rose's body shook with emotion, Nina softly stroked her back, almost like a mother comforting her child. 2 weeks passed after the exhibition ended, and work returned to its usual pace. "Tyler." Rose called me over to her desk. "I want you to lead the next exhibition," she said. I stammered, taken aback. All I can really do is interpret. Planning an event like that isn't my skill. What are you talking about? Your team will help you. Looking around, I saw my co-workers smiling and nodding in support. Their warmth filled my chest. By the way, Nina's work at the reception has been so well received by our visitors that she'll be promoted to reception supervisor next month. Really? I said, smiling as pride for Nina's achievement welled up inside me. Then, Rose gave a small smile. "I want you, and everyone here, to know I'll be transferring to a branch office next month." A collective gasp filled the office. And I felt my own surprise. The branch Rose named was notorious for being an unofficial demotion. This is a deserved evaluation. Not only did I act childishly with the exhibition, but my behavior toward all of you was unworthy not only of a manager but even a decent employee. "I'm genuinely sorry," Rose said, looking down. The room fell silent. "Well then, we'll have to throw you a farewell party, Rose." Fiona's suggestion met with agreement from others. Rose looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. "We've noticed your efforts to change since the exhibition. So while we'll miss you, we'll be looking forward to your return," I added. Holding back tears, Rose pressed her lips together tightly. "Oh, and Tyler, Mr. Hawkins has asked to see you, so please go to his office afterward." My heart skipped a beat at the direct summons from Mr. Hawkins, and I felt a wave of nerves. As I walked toward his office, I ran into Nina. "Hey, Nina. Where are you off to?" "Mr. Hawkins called for me." "Funny, he called me too. Wonder which of us should go in first." "I'll check," she replied with a smile. When we arrived, Nina went in first and quickly returned. "Tyler, he'd like you to come in too." Following her lead, I entered with Nina at my side. "Hello, Tyler. It's been a while since your final interview. Please, have a seat." Mr. Hawkins welcomed us with a warm smile, motioning toward the sofa. I sat down, finding the seat in his office as comfortable as I'd expected. Mr. Hawkins took the seat across from me, with Nina beside him. It felt a bit like an interview. Then, Mr. Hawkins stood, placed a hand on my shoulder, and spoke. "Tyler, I owe you my gratitude. Thank you for helping mend the relationship between Nina and Rose. I didn't do anything," I stammered, standing quickly in embarrassment. When I tried to stand up while saying so in a hurry, Mr. Hawkins restrained me, looked me in the eye for a while, and then went back to his seat. "Oh, but you did. I've watched over the two of them for a long time. I knew that Rose treated Nina poorly, but there was nothing I could do. If I showed favoritism to Nina, Rose would only grow more resentful. I realize I burdened Nina greatly, especially with the matter of her scar. But you, Tyler, you became her ally. Because of you, they've both grown. Nina has brightened up, and Rose, well, she's taking responsibility to the point of requesting her own transfer." I was impressed that Rose had taken it upon herself to ask Mr. Hawkins for the transfer when he gave me a warm smile. "I hear you're dating Nina. Knowing it's you, I feel at ease. Please, look after her in my place." "Yes, of course," I replied, straightening up with a nod, and Nina's cheeks softly flushed. After our meeting with Mr. Hawkins, even as we walked down the hallway, her cheeks were still tinged with pink. "Oh, honestly, Dad. That felt like a pre-wedding talk with the parents. Don't worry, I'll be back for the real one." At that, Nina blushed even deeper, her face now fully red. "Why are you saying things like that, Tyler? Unless you don't want to marry me?" "No, that's not it. I want to marry you too. I've even thought we could build a home near the office and have 3 kids." Trying to sound a bit dejected, I was surprised when Nina responded so eagerly, making me laugh. "You've thought it through more than I have." "Oh no. I was supposed to keep that to myself," she said, realizing. "No, let's talk about it more. The first kid should be a girl, right?" "Yeah, someone sweet, like Rose," Nina said with a smile. "Well, maybe a little humbler than Rose?" "Oh, that's mean. Rose has changed, you know." Nina's words reassured me that she and Rose had indeed grown closer, bringing me a quiet happiness. If you act with arrogance and pride, life will eventually teach you a hard lesson. But if you can learn, reflect, and make things right, happiness will be waiting on the other side. Hand in hand, Nina and I dreamed together of that happy future. If you can answer, I'll do anything you say. It was a mixer set up by a high school friend. There, Lily, the daughter of a company CEO and once considered the cutest in school, gave us a daring smile and posed a tough question to us. Every man there, eager to win over this woman of our dreams, racked his brain. But no one could answer. Yet, the answer came to me instantly. As I said it aloud, a murmur swept through the room. And then, from Lily herself, words I could hardly believe reached my ears. "You know, I still like you." Saying that, she drew closer to me. "My name is Will. I used to work for a company, but now I run my own business. Although it's small and demanding, managing things myself suits me well, and I feel fulfilled every day." Then, one day, I got a message from Jack. "Hey, Will, we're having a mixer soon. You're coming, too." "Huh? What's with the sudden invite?" Jack was an old high school classmate of mine. He's the son of a company CEO and was always looking down on me, probably because I was raised by a single mom and only finished high school. No doubt, he invited me this time to make himself look better. I was about to refuse when Jack's next words made me catch my breath. "Lily's coming, too. You remember her, right? We all went to high school together." Lily. How could I forget? I used to date her. It was back in our junior year. She became class president through a drawing, and I got the role of vice president. Nobody else wanted to do it. Don't get any ideas just because you're paired up with Lily, Will. Jack said, clearly jealous. And he had good reason. Lily was famous for being the CEO's girl in school, smart, athletic, and the daughter of a CEO. Everyone thought she was perfect. Nice to work with you as vice president, Will. Lily said, flashing me a warm smile, which, to my embarrassment, I awkwardly stumbled to reply to. Even though I probably didn't make the best first impression, Lily continued to be friendly with me afterward. As someone who struggled with social interactions, I was genuinely grateful for that. Working together on class projects, I noticed her curiosity was endless. Even in the middle of tasks given by teachers or classmates, if something caught her interest, she'd drop everything and dive right into it. For instance, she'd get curious about why different types of cicadas have unique sounds, suddenly start solving a complex math problem, begin researching historical events like the Shays Rebellion, or even practice Morse code and teach it to me so we could exchange messages that way. Naturally, as vice president, I often picked up whatever tasks she'd abandoned. But I didn't mind at all. Listen, Will. Cicadas' sounds vary because of differences in their abdominal cavity size and the way their abdominal plates move. She would come to me, practically glowing with excitement, eager to share whatever she'd just discovered. Her eyes sparkled as if she'd made some groundbreaking discovery, and seeing her like that was so endearing that it was no wonder I fell for her. As long as she was happy, I didn't mind picking up the slack. I never planned to confess my feelings. She was way out of my league, just watching her light up was enough for me. Then, to my astonishment, she confessed to me, and we started dating. The news spread through school like wildfire. Hey, Will, I heard you're dating Lily. Break up with her now. She's a perfect daughter of a CEO, acing school and sports. While you're nothing but a kid from a single-parent household with no particular skills. Surely, you understand you're in completely different worlds? Jack had always been direct with his jabs like that. I knew that most people around us probably shared his view that Lily and I were a mismatch. Even I didn't believe we were truly a match. But that didn't mean I was going to break up with her over it. If I didn't measure up, I'd just work hard to become the kind of guy who did. I threw myself into studying, sports, and the responsibilities of being vice president. But all that effort didn't pay off. Will, I want to break up. It was less than 3 months into our relationship when Lily said those words. It hurt, but somewhere deep down, I wasn't entirely surprised. I see, I replied. But could you tell me why? I need to make sense of it. Because we live in different worlds. She spoke hesitantly, looking down as she struggled to find the words. All I could say was, all right, and then I walked away. We continued working on committee tasks together, but from then on, she never abandoned her duties halfway through like before. And we never really spoke again. Another year passed, and when we became seniors, we ended up in different classes. Eventually, we stopped even catching each other's eye. That was the end of things with Lily. But even after being dumped, I couldn't let her go. I tried to accept her reason that we lived in different worlds, but it never fully settled. Even now, a decade later, she still lingers in my mind. When Jack mentioned she'd be at the mixer, I thought maybe this was a chance. Just one look at her, and then I could let go, or so I told myself. All right, I'll come, I told Jack. And then, on the day of the mixer, as I walked into the bar Jack had chosen, a few people had already gathered. Everyone there was a high school classmate, so it felt a bit like a mini reunion. Hey, Will, long time no see. So what are you up to now? Oh, just working at a regular company. Yeah, I figured. Guess you didn't make it to college, huh? Kinda limits your options, doesn't it? After a bit of small talk, everyone drifted back into their own conversations. Not that I expected anyone to be all that interested in me anyway, so I just shrugged it off. "Hey, Jack." "Lily." One of the group members waved toward the entrance. I took a deep breath, bracing myself as I looked over. And I couldn't look away. 10 years had only made Lily more stunning. Everyone in the bar couldn't help but be mesmerized by her. Seeing Jack beside her, escorting her in, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. I came here to put an end to things, yet seeing her now was only making me fall all over again. I quickly shifted my gaze away. With Lily's arrival, everyone was finally here, and the mixer began. But soon enough, it became Lily's show. Every guy there was vying to talk to her, while the women sipped their drinks, sighing, "This is so boring." "Hey, Jack, you came in with Lily, didn't you? Did you just happen to run into her at the entrance?" One of the guys suddenly asked Jack. Jack's face lit up with satisfaction, as if he'd been waiting for the chance to answer. "My company and Lily's are partners. That's how we got to know each other, both being children of CEOs, you know," he added, stressing the last part. Jack looked at me and widened his eyes in feigned surprise. "Oh, so you actually came, Will. I did get your RSVP, but honestly, I thought you'd get cold feet at the last minute and bail." I sighed inwardly. Some things never change. To everyone's surprise, Lily leaned into Jack, feigning a sympathetic look. Now, Jack, don't be mean. I bet he's been single ever since I dated him back in high school. He's probably just desperate." "True enough. But honestly, what kind of woman would want a guy from a single-parent household with no real talents?" Jack's words didn't faze me, but hearing Lily say something like that hurt. Sure, her beauty had only grown over the years, but it seemed her personality hadn't fared as well. Feeling a pang of disappointment, I tried to see this as a chance to finally let her go for good. "Hey, I've got an idea. Let's play a game," Lily suggested. "We'll draw lots, and the person who pulls the winning ticket gets to ask a question. If anyone can answer, the questioner has to do whatever they say. But if no one can answer, the questioner gets to give everyone an order." Everyone agreed with Lily's suggestion, saying, "Sounds fun." Caught up in the atmosphere, I ended up joining in as well. A few safe questions were asked, with those who answered giving mild orders like reveal who you had a crush on in high school or sing a popular song. Then Lily drew the winning lot. I could feel the men around me hold their breath. She studied the winning ticket for a moment, then gave a sly smile. "All right, here's my question. There's a book with one torn page. If you add up the numbers of the remaining pages, they total 15,000. So, which page is missing?" Silence fell over the group. The women quickly admitted defeat, while the men hunched over, furiously trying to solve the puzzle. Looks like this could take a while." "All right, I'll give you all just one more minute," Lily announced. When Lily said that, the men exclaimed, "What?" and began scratching their heads. "Aren't you going to try, Will?" "Oh, wait, sorry. I bet this one's a bit too hard for you. You probably gave up from the start, didn't you?" Lily's fingers tapped a rhythm on the table. I noticed the pattern and immediately began running calculations in my head. The missing pages are 25 and 26. Correct, she replied with a satisfied nod. All the men went pale. "What? No way. How did you figure it out?" Jack demanded, practically lunging at me. I jotted down the equation on a napkin and showed them. Everyone there nodded in understanding, murmuring, "I see." The women, suddenly intrigued, gathered around me. "Will, that's amazing. You worked out that formula, and in your head, no less, with only a minute to spare." I was a bit at a loss, having gone from nearly invisible to suddenly at the center of attention. All right, Lily interrupted. "The winner gets to give me an order. So, Will, what would you like me to do? Come with me. All right, then. Looks like we're off, everyone. See you around. Lily and I each got our things together and stepped out of the bar. I noticed Jack glaring at me, clearly frustrated, but I ignored him. Outside, the night had fully settled in, the streets quiet and bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. We headed to a nearby cafe. Its quiet atmosphere perfect at this late hour. Will, you're just as smart as ever, Lily said with a smile after we ordered coffee and dessert. I sighed. That question, it was deliberate, wasn't it? You knew I'd remember it from back when you taught me how to solve it. Of course. But I had to take a gamble on whether you'd still remember. She looked delighted, her eyes gleaming as she glanced at the apple pie on the table. I'd thought her personality had changed for the worse, but I'd been wrong. She hadn't changed at all. I felt a quiet relief as I took a sip of coffee. I actually wasn't going to answer since I already knew the problem. But then you went and tapped out that Morse code. Yep. I'm so glad you still remember it. Makes all those lessons I gave you in high school worth it. Lily smiled, tapping the table rhythmically. At the mixer. It had meant I want to be alone with you, and now it seemed to mean I'm happy. She'd been sending me these little signals all along. So, what's this all about? You went to all that trouble. Seems like it's something Jack can't hear? That's right. Well, Will, I still like you. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But her serious gaze confirmed it wasn't a joke. My heart started racing, and I could feel my face heating up. Still. What do you mean? You were the one who ended things back then. That's true. But. She bit her lip and looked down, hesitating. Just then, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. I have to go. Will, let's exchange contact info. Huh? Why? Because I told you I still like you. She repeated the words, making my face flush even more. I couldn't help but chuckle as we swapped contacts. Well, see you around. She winked at me, finishing her apple pie and tea in no time, then left the cafe. I let out a long sigh. I took a sip of coffee, hoping it would help me calm down. But every time I looked at Lily's name, now added in my messaging app, I couldn't relax at all. A few days later, a message popped up from Lily. Do you want to go to the new theme park in the next town? She sent a picture of 2 tickets, and I knew right away there was no room for a no. It was just like when we dated before. Back then, she'd pick a date location like, or going to the museum. Buy the tickets, and leave me no choice but to go along. Feeling a rush of nostalgia, I couldn't help but smile. Sunday arrived with clear skies. The perfect weather for a theme park. We'd agreed to meet at 10 a.m., but Lily hadn't shown up, even as the hour passed. I was just starting to worry that something had happened when I saw her rushing toward me. Sorry for the wait, Will. You okay? Did the train get delayed? No, it's not that. I couldn't finish some work yesterday, so I had to stop by the office. Wait, you work on Saturdays too? Being the CEO's daughter means there's a lot to handle. Anyway, let's hurry in. I've been looking forward to this. With her tugging eagerly at my hand, I didn't get the chance to ask more about work. Will, which ride do you want to go on first? Lily grabbed a park map by the entrance, looking at me expectantly. I was so surprised, I stared at her. What? Did I say something weird? No. I just figured you'd drag me to whatever you wanted without asking. That's how our dates went back in high school, didn't they? I'm not the same girl I was back then. I've grown up, you know. Blushing slightly, she pouted. Then wrapped her arm around mine, urging me to choose something. With my heart racing, I decided on a roller coaster. I remembered she used to love the thrill rides. That was so much fun. By the time the western sky was tinged with a soft red, we were leaving the park. Today, Lily let me pick all the rides and even the food. I chose things I thought she'd enjoy, and from her satisfied smile, it seemed like she did. With a refreshed expression, Lily stretched out widely. "So, Will, where do you want to go next?" she asked, leaning in close to look at my face. It felt odd for me to be the one picking the destination. Was this really a date, after all? She told me she liked me, but I haven't given her an answer, and she doesn't seem to be in any rush for one. "Hey, Will?" she called, tugging insistently on my arm, snapping me back to reality. "Oh, right. How about the museum? There's a special exhibit I've been curious about." "Ooh, the museum. That sounds great. Let's go," she replied, her face lighting up with excitement. Seeing her so happy, I steeled myself. "Lily, about my response from the other day." "Oh no. I have to hurry back, or my dad's going to get mad." "I'll text you later, Will." Cutting me off, Lily quickly headed home. I stood there, dumbfounded, watching her walk away, unable to do anything else. The following Sunday, we met directly at the museum. I arrived 20 minutes early and found some shade to escape the blazing sun. But even so, the heat made me sweat. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Will." Lily arrived. But something seemed off. Her face was redder than usual. And even in this heat, she wasn't sweating at all. "Lily, are you all right?" "Huh? What do you mean?" She tilted her head in confusion, but her voice lacked its usual energy. "Let's just go inside already, it's so hot," she mumbled, taking a step forward before stumbling slightly. I quickly caught her, alarmed by how hot her body felt. Even considering the high temperature, she was burning up. We rushed inside the building. I asked the receptionist to let us use the first aid room. "Lily, do you have a headache? Are you feeling nauseous?" "Yes, it hurts. I feel sick," she replied, her voice faint and lifeless. From her condition, I quickly realized she was probably suffering from heat stroke. Using the ice packs provided in the first aid room, I worked to cool her down and helped her sip some oral rehydration drinks. "You're welcome to use as much as you need," the receptionist kindly assured me. "I'm starting to feel a little better," she murmured, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Did you eat breakfast, Lily?" I asked. She gave a slight nod, though her gaze avoided mine. "What about sleep? Are you getting enough at night?" This time, she shook her head. And my heart tightened. "And breaks?" I started, but the words caught in my throat. The answer was all too obvious. "Are you taking any at all? The other day, you mentioned working over the weekend." A hint of frustration crept into my voice. Lily stayed silent. But her silence spoke volumes. "So, you're not, are you?" I came to that conclusion in my mind. I could see Lily's shoulders trembling slightly. A long silence hung between us. Finally, she slowly lifted her head. Her eyes a mix of determination and uncertainty. Her voice shook as she began. "I'm working at my dad's company now." I held my breath. The weight of Lily's words sank deep into my heart. "Our family business, it hasn't been doing well for a long time." Her voice faltered. "I thought if I could help my dad somehow." All I could really do was work. Lily took a deep breath and began speaking again, her voice trembling. "I first realized things weren't going well when I was a junior in high school, right around the time we started dating." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if revisiting that memory. "Before that, I was only thinking about myself. I didn't know anything about the company and just did whatever I wanted. Everyone spoiled me because I was the CEO's daughter, and I let it go to my head." Tears started to form in her eyes. "I believed we had plenty of money and never questioned it. So, I'd ask my parents to let me travel abroad, buy expensive books. I made a lot of selfish demands. She gave a sad smile, shaking her head slightly. But it wasn't like that at all. We didn't have nearly as much money as I thought. And yet, my parents. Her voice caught in her throat. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to continue. Despite everything, my parents still granted my every whim. Now I realize just how much they must have sacrificed. A single tear traced down her cheek. One day, my father told me, the company might go bankrupt. That one sentence changed everything for me. Lily clenched her fists tightly. It was such a shock, and I realized how much I'd been relying on them. I felt I had to repay all the money I'd wasted. So I started working part-time. She raised her head slightly, looking into my eyes. But I didn't want anyone to know. Especially not you. Her voice was tinged with sorrow. Everyone saw me as this perfect person. I was terrified that if they saw my weakness, they'd all abandon me, that fear was always there. She let out a long, heavy sigh. So I kept it all a secret. But as I kept working, I lost more and more time with you. Another tear fell from her eyes. I was struggling every day, and before I knew it, we'd grown distant. But even then, I always. Her voice trembled. I'm sorry, Will. I should have told you everything back then. But I was afraid. I thought if you saw how weak I really was, you'd hate me. Lily covered her face with both hands. A sharp pain pierced my heart. You should have told me. I was your boyfriend. At the very least, I could have been there to listen. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. Because I knew you'd say that. You're too kind, Will. Lily gripped the hem of her skirt tightly. Do you remember that time before we started dating, back in our first year? You helped me once. I tilted my head, trying to remember. Lily smiled. There was a time when I was being bullied by a senior. She didn't like me because the guy she liked had a crush on me. She'd hidden my shoes. And I couldn't go home until I found them. You helped me look for them. I remembered. I recalled helping a girl look for her missing shoes. I found out later that you had practiced that day, didn't you? It was an important day, deciding who would play in the upcoming tournament. But instead, you looked for my shoes and ended up late, missing your chance. Even if I hadn't been late, I might not have made it, so it's not something you need to worry about, Lily. Maybe, but still, you put yourself second to help me. That's why I fell in love with you. When we were in the same class and got paired up on the committee in our second year, it felt like fate. So I confessed to you. And I became your girlfriend. But, as I mentioned, that's when I learned about the troubles at my father's company. I knew if you found out, you'd sacrifice yourself for me again. So, I broke up with you. I thought that if I said we lived in different worlds, you'd give up on me. As Lily finished speaking, the first date room fell silent. Is the company still struggling now? Yes, but Jack's father said he'd help fund the company. If I marry Jack, that is. I was speechless. Lily gave a bitter smile. If I marry him, I won't be able to see you like this anymore, right? Or tell you how much I've always loved you. I knew I'd regret it if I didn't say anything. So, I had him set up that mixer so I could see you. I'm sorry for the way I acted at first, I didn't mean to put you down. I couldn't risk losing his support. Before I knew it, I was embracing her. My body moved on its own. And I felt her take a sharp breath in my arms. You're the one sacrificing yourself now. Please, lean on me. I still love you, Lily. I've carried this feeling since high school. But I've only ever thought about myself. That's who I am. I'm not the perfect person everyone thinks I am. I know that. I held her a little tighter as she spoke, her voice thick with tears. I know you're endlessly curious, and once something catches your attention, you lose track of everything else. I was the one who picked up the work you left behind back then, remember? But I didn't mind. I actually enjoyed it. You're strange, Will. Are you really sure about me? It's you I want, Lily. Lily looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. When I wiped them away, she smiled softly and pressed her lips to mine. After thoroughly enjoying the museum, we went to a nearby cafe, where we began discussing our future over lunch. But then, heavy footsteps approached. And as I looked up, there was Jack, glaring down at us, eyebrows raised. Lily, what's going on here? Cheating on me? It's not like that, Jack. We just happened to meet. Don't lie. You two went to the museum together, didn't you? Jack held up his phone, showing me the screen. It displayed a photo of us entering the museum together. A chill ran down my spine. Had he been following Lily? Jack grabbed Lily's arm, pulling her up roughly. The water on our table shook violently. Will, Lily is my fiancée. If you have any sense of decency, you'll never see her again. He shot me a piercing look before dragging Lily away. She glanced back at me, worry written on her face. I mouthed, "It's okay," and she nodded firmly in response. Jack stopped and, as if suddenly remembering, turned back with a smug expression. Oh, and we'll be officially announcing the engagement at the upcoming party. You're invited. A cold smirk crossed his lips. Just sit back and watch as Lily becomes someone you'll never reach. With that, he pulled Lily away. Taking a deep breath, I stepped off the elevator into the grand hall of the luxury hotel. It was the 30th anniversary party for Carson Corporation, and the stage for Jack and Lily's engagement announcement. As I entered the lavish venue, an air of elegance enveloped me. The chandelier's lights sparkled off the guests' dresses and suits, filling the room with a shimmering glow. Quite a lavish event. I quietly observed my surroundings, taking everything in. Political heavyweights, influential business leaders, and even celebrities from the entertainment world. Figures from Japan's so-called upper society filled the room. In the midst of it all, Jack walked briskly, leading Lily by his side. A faint shadow darkened her expression. My chest tightened painfully. After a moment, Jack stepped up to the center of the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for gathering here today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Carson Corporation. His voice resonated throughout the venue. I quietly pushed my way through the crowd, moving closer to the front. And on this joyous occasion, I have one more important announcement to make. Jack continued, taking Lily's hand and smiling warmly at her. The sight stoked a burning anger within me. Today, I am honored to introduce my fiancée, Lily Harris. A wave of applause rippled through the audience. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. Stop! My voice rang out across the hall. And in an instant, every eye was on me. Jack's face contorted with shock and anger. Will! What do you think you're doing here? I stepped forward with a steady resolve toward the stage. I'm here to tell the truth, Jack. A murmur spread through the crowd. Everyone, I'd like to reveal the real Jack Carson, I announced. Taking my phone from my pocket, I began operating it. And evidence of Jack's interference with Harris Foods, Lily's father's company, appeared on the venue's large screen. This is proof of Jack's illegal sabotage against his fiancée Lily's father's business. The room erupted in shock. And Jack's face grew pale. Jack carried out these tactics to damage Harris Foods' operations, weakening it financially. He then exploited the vulnerability he'd created, offering to finance the company only on the condition that he could marry Lily, the daughter of Harris Foods' CEO. Suddenly, Jack burst into mocking laughter. Everyone, calm down. Do you know who this joker is? He's a rare breed, a high school graduate. Who would believe anything he says? Murmurs of surprise rippled through the audience. And Jack continued, clearly confident in his victory. Look at him. A guy who didn't even go to college. How would he ever get access to confidential information about our company? I took a deep breath and replied calmly. Yes, I am a high school graduate. My family couldn't afford college because I was raised by a single mother. Jack sneered, enjoying the moment. See? This guy's just a... But I cut him off, standing tall and addressing the entire room. However, if you hear my name, you'll understand who I really am. I looked out over the crowd and announced clearly. My name is Will Turner. After a moment of stunned silence, the room erupted in whispers. Jack's expression shifted to shock as he yelled. Are you insane? That name. Just then, a voice rang out. You, sir. The voice of Jack's father echoed through the hall. The elderly gentleman approached me, his expression a mix of astonishment and respect. I never imagined. Could you truly be that, Will Turner? Jack looked at his father, utterly bewildered. Father? You know this man? His father turned to him with a stern expression. You fool. This man is a major shareholder in our company. And? The elder gentleman then bowed deeply to me. He's the brilliant entrepreneur who used AI-driven innovations to revolutionize our industry within a few short years. The crowd held its breath. Jack's face turned pale. No. It can't be. Impossible. Yes, I am a high school graduate. But I worked twice as hard as anyone else to get where I am today. I remember the day I graduated. I had given up on college to care for my mother, who was ill, and the fear of an uncertain future weighed heavily on me. But in a faint voice, my mother said, Will, you're smart. I know you can carve out your own path. Those words changed my life. During the day, I worked at a factory, and at night, I taught myself programming. I slept just 4 hours a night. The joy I felt when I got my first program to run. It's all a part of who I am today. And then, I had a fateful encounter. One of the senior workers at the factory saw a program I'd written and was amazed. Hey, Will, you're incredible. Think you could redesign our company's system? That one question was the start of my career. Word spread, and soon, I was getting offers even from major companies. While honing my programming skills, I also studied management. I borrowed books from the library and read them tirelessly, sacrificing sleep. Then, I discovered AI technology. I knew instantly, this was it. With AI, I could accomplish what had once seemed impossible. It wasn't just about efficiency, it was about creating new value. 3 years ago, I decided to start my own company. Everyone around me was against it. What could a young high school grad possibly achieve, they said. But I had a dream. I wanted to change the world with technology. I wanted to help people who, like my mother, were in difficult situations. I worked day and night. I failed more times than I could count. But I never gave up. And now, my company has reached the point of revolutionizing the industry. I spoke calmly, yet firmly. Jack, I can no longer overlook your corruption and the despicable actions you've taken against Harris Foods. Ladies and gentlemen, I continued, addressing the audience. I am about to announce the new policies for Carson Corporation. First, we will conduct a thorough review of all fraudulent transactions and illegal activities to date, handling them transparently instead of hiding them. Jack's face twisted in anger. But I pressed on. Second, we will improve the working conditions for our employees. Unpaid overtime and unfair treatment will be entirely eliminated. And we will create an environment where people can work with dignity. A few small claps began to echo through the crowd. Third, we will leverage our technological strengths to prioritize projects that contribute to society. Our goal is not only profit but also the creation of social value. The applause grew louder. And finally, I looked over at Lily, noticing the tears glistening in her eyes. A word about Harris Foods, her father's company. The room fell silent. We will provide full support to Harris Foods, which has been subjected to unfair pressures and interference. Lily looked at me, her face full of surprise. Specifically, we will offer our AI technology free of charge to assist in improving productivity and quality control. We'll also use our network to expand distribution channels, so Harris Foods' high-quality products can reach more consumers. Tears began to spill down Lily's cheeks. Additionally, we will fully compensate for the damages caused by Carson Corporation's previous interference, I added. A wave of astonishment rippled through the crowd. Harris Foods is an outstanding company built on integrity and quality, and it embodies the values every business should strive for. Going forward, I hope to build a relationship where we can grow together and inspire each other. I smiled at Lily. Lily, from now on, pursue your dreams without interference. We'll give our all to support you in making them come true. Lily covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling as she cried. These are the new policies of the reformed Carson Corporation. From this moment, we commit to being an honest, sincere, and socially responsible company. I sincerely ask for your understanding and support. When I finished speaking, the hall was wrapped in silence. Then, in the next moment, a wave of applause broke out. Jack's father approached me, bowing deeply. I apologize. We will thoroughly investigate my son's actions based on the evidence you've gathered. I ask for your continued support for our company. Thank you. I will do my utmost to meet everyone's expectations. Jack's father bowed to me repeatedly, clearly humbled. Suddenly, Jack, standing nearby, punched the wall in frustration. Don't mess with me. I've liked Lily since high school. But she chose you, Will. When you two broke up, I was relieved. But no matter how many times I tried to get close to her, she'd never say yes. I had no other way to make her mine, and now here you are again. Ruining everything. In a sudden, fierce motion, Lily slapped Jack across the face. Caught off guard, he stumbled backward, landing on the floor and looking up at her in shock. Enough. Do you even realize how much trouble you've caused others? When I was struggling, you kept pushing for dates and asking me to be with you, completely ignoring my situation. I would never fall for someone as selfish as you. Lily's tears started to flow freely. I gently rubbed her back, and she buried her face in my chest, sobbing. Jack stayed silent, head bowed, still kneeling on the floor. In the end, Jack was arrested for his role in the business interference. Being the son of the Carson CEO, Jack managed to settle things by paying a fine and wasn't fired from the company. But he was removed from the list of potential successors. Furthermore, he was demoted to a regular employee, with no chance of promotion ever again. A few months later, I was working alongside Lily at Harris Foods. "Oh, this design looks great," I said, standing next to her and examining the new packaging. Optimized through AI, it looks sleek and functional. "Yeah, it's fantastic. This will be definitely sold," Lily replied, her eyes shining. On the wall monitor, a performance graph for Harris Foods was displayed. The curve showed a steady, impressive rise since the implementation, beautifully charted on the screen. Our sales are up 1.5 times from last year, and profits have doubled. Lily murmured, clearly moved. Thanks to AI optimizing our production management and the new markets we've tapped into, I replied with satisfaction. Just then, Lily's assistant, Ben, entered the room. "Ms. Harris, amazing news. We just received a huge order from that upscale supermarket." Lily looked up at me in surprise. I just gave her a sly grin. With this, my dad's dream of nationwide expansion might actually become a reality. Tears glistened in Lily's eyes. Harris Foods sales were thriving. Not long after, Lily's father personally called me in and bowed deeply. It looks like we're finally escaping the vicious cycle we were in. I can't thank you enough, Will. Lily stood beside him, bowing as well. Her father glanced at her with a warm look. I nearly let everything fall onto this girl's shoulders. She's always been so capable, helping us by working multiple part-time jobs since high school. I leaned on her too much. But from now on, I'll make sure she doesn't have to carry the weight alone. Dad, I really don't mind. Lily began. No, my mind is made up. Lily, from now on, if it's too much, just say so. I don't want you pushing yourself anymore. That's what family is for, to support one another, right? Lily nodded sincerely. After ruffling her hair affectionately, her father asked her to walk me out. We walked side by side. Above us stretched a perfectly clear sky. As we strolled, Lily gently intertwined her fingers with mine. Thank you so much, Will. Not only for handling the situation with Jack, but for helping save our company. I did it because it's what I wanted to do. Plus, my company's revenue is up, too, thanks to contracting some work with yours. Lily smiled at my reply. I tightened my grip on her hand just a little. Lily, will you marry me? I want to be by your side, supporting you for the rest of our lives. Her cheeks flushed red. Then she broke into a radiant smile. I want to support you, too. From now on, I want to be with you always. She buried her face in my chest. Holding her close, I felt an overwhelming sense of love. No one is perfect. That's why we rely on each other, finding strength in mutual support. She had once been seen as flawless by those around her, even while she quietly shouldered her struggles. Now, I want to stand by her, helping each other along as we walk through life together. That day, even though she was supposed to be in the meeting at this time, I found her crying quietly in a corner of the emergency stairwell. They said I'm an incompetent high school dropout and that I don't belong here. Molly, who was supposed to be one of the developers, had been kicked out of the meeting after just 5 minutes. As soon as I heard that, I stormed into the meeting room. You're all fired. The people in the room were frozen in shock at my declaration. Then, as they realized what I'd said, the room erupted in chaos. My name is Alex. I'm a 36-year-old businessman. My grandfather is the chairman of a large corporate group, though I've rarely benefited from it. The reason is that my parents, despite my grandfather's objections, got married and basically ran away to do so. My father, who had been a high-ranking employee at a trading company, quit his job and started running a small shop in a rural town. Although we weren't exactly wealthy, our shop was a valued part of this nearly abandoned town, where most of the residents were elderly. We even offered delivery service. My father believed in selling good quality products at lower prices to make the people in the town happy. Because of his philosophy, despite how busy he was, I remember our sales were modest. Still, our life, grounded in the town and the support of the community, was far from unpleasant. With so few children around, people who I could hang out with were naturally limited. In a town where all the elementary school kids didn't even add up to 10, we had to take a bus to a school in the city. At the city school, everyone was always talking about gaming consoles, but very few of us owned one. Occasionally, we'd play at the house of a friend who had one, but I didn't feel like I fully fit in with that crowd. But there were plenty of rowdy kids who liked running around outside, and I was one of them. The city schoolyard was smaller than the empty lots back home, but there was enough space for kids to play tag or dodgeball. So I'd come home covered in dirt and get scolded for messing up my clothes. Since I had to catch the bus, I couldn't stay out late with my friends in the city, but once back in town, I'd spend time with a few other kids, playing soccer or whatever we wanted in the open fields. With so few children in town and most adults commuting to work in the city and not coming home until late, In a town where most adults either ran local shops like my father or were retired elderly residents. It was only natural for older kids to look after the younger ones. When I was in middle school, I had local high school and middle school kids looking out for me. So, by the time I became a middle schooler, I started watching over the younger kids myself. That wasn't too hard, though, since there were even fewer kids in my generation. Molly, who lived close by, was the only younger child around me. Her parents worked and lived in the city, leaving her in the care of her grandmother in town, so I hardly ever saw them. Molly was a shy, quiet child. A child who can't express their wants. Is that the right way to put it? She was the type who tried hard to be a good girl so as not to be a burden to her grandmother and to please her parents whenever they came back. It was heartbreaking to watch someone so young endure so much, even from my perspective as a middle schooler. I told my parents about it, but there wasn't much I could do as a kid. So, when I went over to Molly's house, my parents would tell me gently, "Take a few things from the store to bring as a gift." I'd hand Molly a small bag every time I saw her. I didn't know what was inside. But Molly's grandmother would smile when she saw the contents, and she'd treat me to dinner. Looking back now, those bags probably held food or daily necessities. Over time, Molly and her family started visiting our shop frequently, and we eventually became close family friends. Molly began calling me Big Bro, and as an only child, I was thrilled to have what felt like a real sister. We grew up almost like siblings. Several years later, my father suddenly passed away from an illness, and it was at his funeral that I learned, for the first time, that he was the heir to a major corporation. My grandfather regretted opposing my parents' marriage and had been searching for them. However, when he finally found my father, he saw how happy he was, fully integrated into this town, running his own small shop, and decided not to bring him back. He quietly kept an eye on us from afar, but when he heard of my father's passing, he came immediately. Then, he proposed to take my mother and me in as part of the family. At first, my mother hesitated, but without my father, it would have been challenging to keep the store running. And there was also the issue of my education. Although I was prepared to give up my studies and start working, neither my mother nor my grandfather supported that idea. Eventually, my mother agreed, and we moved in with my grandfather. Molly cried when we left, but we promised each other to write letters and kept each other updated on our lives through our correspondence. Being taken in by my grandfather brought a sudden change to my life, and though I felt disoriented at first, I was grateful for the financial support that allowed me to focus on my studies and get accepted. He didn't just cover my entrance exam fees, he also paid for my entire schooling up to graduation. The condition, however, was that I would work in one of his group companies after graduation. I knew it was a privilege, but I still vented my frustration in doubts and letters. Back then, the only person I could confide in was Molly. I'll never forget how she replied, "You're doing great, Big Bro." A few years later, her parents divorced. Her mother retained custody, but she never came to get Molly, not even attending the funeral of her grandmother, who had raised her. As she approached middle school graduation, she confided in me that continuing her education would be difficult, so I took bold action. I humbled myself before my grandfather and the company, asking if she could be given a job, even starting from factory work. Despite her limited education. Since the company is well known for its domestic car brand, its factories offered dormitories with cafeterias, so she wouldn't lack food or shelter. When I explained that the work would be tough, she looked at me with determined eyes and said, "Even so, I want to try and make it on my own." I knew then that she would be fine. Time flew by, and over 10 years have passed since then. Before I knew it, I'd become the vice president, seen by the company as my grandfather's successor. In the beginning, many employees were wary of me as the high-profile hire. I was frowned upon by the bosses, but some of the executives knew my father and would reminisce, saying things like, "Your father was remarkable back when he worked at a trading company in the group." These mentors, while fond of me, were tough, patiently teaching and guiding me through work with a steady hand. That foundation is what led me to my current role as vice president. Rumors about nepotism still persist, but I've produced results and never embarrassed those who trained me. I feel proud, standing strong and confident, knowing that I climbed up through my own merit. Of course, I don't forget that I owe much to my grandfather's influence. But I understood that my promotion was because I'd earned enough trust to be given the position of vice president. And over these past 10 years, it hasn't only been me putting in the effort. Molly, too, kept studying online while working in the factory, developing IT skills and eventually earning a position at the main office. To be precise, she moved from being a part-time worker to a full-time employee. When it was decided that Molly would join the technical team, my mother, Molly, and I celebrated at a nice restaurant. My mother, who worried so much about Molly, had even suggested that she live with us, given how her biological mother had abandoned her. But Molly insisted on standing on her own, so my mother did her best to support her by at least sending her groceries. For my mother, who felt a profound loss after my father's passing and then losing me to my grandfather, Molly became like a real daughter. For me, who grew up with Molly almost as family, I was thrilled by her promotion. Now, working with her at headquarters, I truly admired her for the knowledge and skills she'd worked so hard to acquire. And I couldn't help but feel proud, wanting to boast to everyone, "Look at my amazing little sister." In truth, Molly is exceptionally capable at work. When she first joined the technical team, the atmosphere grew tense, given the male-dominated environment. But fortunately, some employees recognized her from her time as a factory worker. What started with awkward conversations gradually turned into a smooth working relationship as people saw her competence and technical knowledge. Some who initially dismissed her for being a woman were eventually won over by her dedication. Handling criticism with thoughtfulness and never showing tears, pushing through her work with diligence. Although Molly was fully accepted in the technical team, her reputation in other departments wasn't as positive. In fact, as her ability to foster smoother collaboration with the technical team won her admiration from many of the men, she became the target of jealousy from some of the female employees. I would sometimes overhear groups of female employees gossiping about her in the break room. "Isn't she embarrassed, flirting with all the guys? Technical team? Isn't that just a group of nerds? She's just getting a big head from their attention." Their petty remarks didn't even acknowledge Molly's hard work or talent. All I could think was how grateful I was that Molly wasn't placed in an admin position dominated by female employees. In terms of putting people where they're best suited, Molly's skills truly shine in the technical department. I'm grateful to the HR team for making the right call, not sticking her in a random admin role just because she's a woman. As I passed by the break room, I heard the click of heels and was stopped by a beautiful woman approaching from the front. It was Rose, a top employee from the sales department. She comes from a good family, has an impressive educational background, and is the daughter of one of the company's executives. She's a bit of a celebrity within the company, admired by many men and even more so by the women. "Alex, where are you off to?" "Oh, just heading back to work after lunch," I lied nonchalantly. In truth, I was meeting up with Molly for a rare lunch together. "I see. I was hoping we could eat lunch together, but that's too bad." Rose, with a slightly lonely expression, is indeed beautiful. But I know that she changes her behavior depending on whom she's talking to. In fact, her father, Michael, the sales manager, has disliked me since I joined the company, and while Rose is talented, she has been somewhat pampered in the department he oversees. Even if she makes mistakes, she rarely gets reprimanded, and others are left to clean up after her. Yet, she does well in sales, manages major clients, and can hold her own in English with international clients. So I understand why she's so popular among female employees. Still, I wasn't fond of her type. Maybe you'd call her a go-getter. Although her father dislikes me, Rose seems to feel differently and has been openly seeking my attention, especially since I became vice president. She doesn't even hide her desire to be with me as a candidate for the next president. I can't stand it. People say any man would be thrilled to be pursued by a beautiful woman, but I know she only wants my title, not me. I'm dating the vice president, who's the next in line for the president. It was obvious that she only wanted the status that came with it, and to her, I was nothing more than a mere accessory. So, I tried to avoid her as much as possible, though it seemed she'd anticipated me today. I'm sorry about that. My breaks are irregular, so it's hard to coordinate. But make sure you're taking proper breaks. Yes, thank you for your concern. As long as we were just exchanging polite words, she was the perfect elite beauty. All right then, I'll take my leave. She walked past me into the break room. I could imagine her joining the circle of female employees gossiping in there. I continued to the rooftop, where we'd agreed to meet. There's a small terrace there, not popular due to the narrow space and strong sunlight, and it's become a bit of a forgotten spot. When I arrived, Molly was already there. Big bro, you're late. Sorry. She'd been pouting, but the moment I apologized, she broke into a smile. Together, we enjoyed a relaxing, fun lunch with homemade bento box from my mom. One day, we went out to dinner with my mom and Molly at a restaurant over the weekend. Molly seemed in high spirits, like she had something she wanted to say. As my mother and I waited, curious about her news, we took our seats in a private room. The moment we sat down, Molly beamed and said, "Guess what? There's going to be a meeting about an engine design I worked on. The technical department holds meetings to review developed components, and if they're approved, they become part of the final product." For Molly, it was her first time having a part she developed brought up in such a meeting. It was an honor for a new employee. My mother and I watched her excitement with warm smiles. Seeing her now a self-assured, independent young woman was so different from the shy, timid girl she'd once been. Thinking about how she'd leveraged her experience handling parts in the factory after middle school, taking various certifications to get this far. It was deeply moving. Well then, let's make tonight a celebration for that. Yes. And Molly, you're not paying for anything tonight. Oh, no, that's not why I told you. That troubled look on her face was the same as always. She's never been accustomed to receiving kindness, nor does she know how to rely on others. So, my mother and I decided long ago to indulge her as much as we could. Don't you want us to celebrate with you? That's not fair, big bro. Puffing her cheeks in that familiar pout, a habit she's had since she was a child. My mother sided with me, saying gently, "I'd like to celebrate with you too," and with that, Molly nodded, blushing and smiling with a bit of resignation. Our dinner that evening revolved around Molly eagerly talking about her latest work. Even though my mother didn't understand much of the technical details, she kept nodding and smiling, saying, "I'm just happy to see you so excited, Molly." As for me, I could follow along and was genuinely impressed. It was a revolutionary system, I thought. It had a level of completeness that made me feel confident it would pass the meeting. When I said, "We'll have to celebrate again once it's launched," Molly scolded me for jumping the gun, but her face lit up with a bright smile, shining with anticipation of success. And yet, here she was, crying. Tears streamed down her face, filled with frustration and despair. At a time when she should have been attending that important meeting, I found her quietly sobbing in a corner of the emergency stairwell. I knew she came here when things were tough, but I never expected to run into her here by chance today, of all days. Startled, I quickly led her to a nearby private room and, after calming her down, asked what had happened. Her answer left me speechless. She had handed out her designs and supporting documents to the participants, and the meeting had barely started when, after about 5 minutes, someone had said, "Incompetent high school dropouts don't belong here." And with that, she'd been dismissed. As soon as I heard this, I left Molly there and rushed to the meeting room. Without hesitation, I burst in and announced, "You're all fired." The people in the room froze, stunned by my declaration. Then, as they began to process my words, the room erupted in chaos. "Alex, what are you talking about? barging in like this? We're in the middle of a meeting. Get out. The first to recover was Michael, the sales manager. Others soon chimed in, saying things like, "Yeah, this isn't your place," and, "Alex, this has nothing to do with you. I don't know what's going on, but this is clearly inappropriate." Even Rose, who usually fawns over me, sneered. None of them seemed remotely concerned that a new designer had been thrown out of the meeting. The realization fueled my anger further. I was about to unleash some choice words when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned, still furious, and standing there was Matthew, the head of the technical department. "Alex, calm down. What are you doing here?" I was asked to explain the parts on behalf of our new employee. Matthew's calm tone only added to my irritation. Our new employee had been kicked out for no reason. If anyone should be angrier than me, it was him, yet he stood there, composed. "Matthew, are you aware of why the new employee was dismissed?" "No." "That's why I intend to ask about it before the meeting begins." His words were firm, his gaze cold. And then I understood. He was angry, too. Good. Molly wasn't alone. She had a place in her department, and at least the technical team was on her side. That realization lifted a weight from my shoulders, helping me regain some composure. The meeting is already running late. As head of the technical department, you should prioritize the product explanation over discussing the new employee. Michael's irritated voice was met with a cold response from Matthew. "I'd like to hear a legitimate reason why the most knowledgeable engineer behind this design was thrown out, and I, who have only a general overview, was summoned in her place." The room fell silent for a moment. "Well, that's, Michael stammered, his voice barely audible. As the others averted their gazes, trying to avoid involvement, Rose's clear voice cut through. Despite her being the designer, I felt that this meeting was too much for a mere high school dropout newbie, so I requested her to leave. A dignified voice rang out, resonant as if it had delivered justice. Those words, devoid of any hint of guilt, struck a nerve in me. And who made that decision? Everyone here, of course. Isn't that right? At her words, the employees avoided eye contact and remained silent, which made Rose frown. Alex and Matthew are asking for clarification. Could you all just tell the truth? Convinced of her position, she glanced around, and reluctantly, a few employees nodded. Looking satisfied, Rose smiled, but one employee spoke up clearly. It was Rose who first said high school dropouts don't belong here, and then Michael told her to get out, calling her an incompetent dropout. When a younger employee spoke up, another employee followed, confirming the truth of their statement. This sparked a wave of sympathetic voices that began to fill the room. That was harsh. She left crying. I hope she's okay. Although spoken in hushed tones, it was clear that many, especially younger employees, saw Molly's treatment as unfair. Seeing this, Michael and Rose's faces darkened. Enough of this chatter. I spoke to Rose, who had slammed her hand on the desk. No, the one who needs to be quiet here is you. The quiet anger in my voice startled Rose. But she quickly recovered, glaring at me. And just what business do you have here, Alex? This meeting doesn't concern you. Following Rose's words, Michael chimes in. Exactly. Why are you here, Alex? And as for firing us, you don't have that authority. As he said this, other employees, emboldened by his words, chimed in with "That's right," and started turning on me. You're correct. I don't have the authority to fire you all. And you, equally, had no authority to throw out the designer. Exactly. She was here as a representative of the technical department. She's the most knowledgeable about this technology. And yet, could the reason really be? He let out a deep sigh, rubbing his temples as if to ease a headache. What's this? Why are you blaming us like that? She's a new hire and even a high school dropout. What could we possibly learn from someone like that? That's right. Besides, I hear it was Alex who pulled some strings to get her a job here. Favoritism isn't a good look, you know. Without a hint of remorse, Michael and Rose said this as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Yes, I won't deny that I arranged for her to work at the factory part-time right after she graduated middle school. Rose and the others smirked, as if satisfied with this confession. Encouraged by them, others jumped in, spewing baseless gossip, nepotism from the vice president, probably only here because she's pretty. She must have used her looks to get where she is. Tired of the slander, I raised my voice. But since then, she's earned the equivalent of a college degree through online learning. She went through the same rigorous exam and interview process as any new employee to become a full-time staff member. The murmuring employees fell silent. Did they truly not know? It's difficult to get hired by this company, after all. That's probably why there were so many rumors about how a high school dropout could have joined. Yet, it was Rose and her circle who had steered that speculation into a narrative filled with malice. Just as Alex said, her technical skills are outstanding. Plus, she holds several difficult-to-obtain certifications. He looked around the room and then added, in fact, in the technical department, no one else could explain this component with the same accuracy and precision as she can. Matthew's clear words silenced everyone in the room. Only Rose and Michael bit their lips in frustration, glaring at him as if he were something detestable. Let's get back on track. Michael, let me ask you again. Do you have any legitimate reason, other than her level of education, for excluding a skilled employee from the meeting? Michael merely grunted, unable to respond. Then Rose cut in. With all due respect, Alex, we didn't know about her capabilities. All we knew was that she had only a high school dropout. She looked up at me with a coy, almost flirtatious expression. So, naturally, it's reasonable to assume she was underqualified, isn't it? Seeing her complete lack of remorse, I said. It seems you still don't understand. Dismissing an employee who was the lead designer simply due to her educational background constitutes harassment. Are you aware of that? My voice was cold, and for the first time, Rose's expression shifted. Suddenly, excuses started pouring out. It was a rational decision. I didn't mean it that way, and I thought it might be too much responsibility for someone so young. Rose kept piling on more explanations, seemingly unaware that with every word, she was digging deeper her own grave. Fed up, I turned my gaze back to Michael. Regarding this incident, the president, Mr. Underwood, will be following up on this as a serious matter. So please prepare a full account of the events. With that, I left the room. Matthew joined me, showing his disinterest in staying, and we both walked out. From the other side of the closed door, we could hear angry voices, but we shrugged in return to handle the necessary follow-up. The incident was soon reported as a major case throughout the company, with clear instructions issued to prevent similar issues in the future. Mr. Underwood reported it to the chairman, Mr. Olson, who made a public announcement across the group, expressing the gravity of mistreatment based on academic background. Anonymous surveys and new consultation lines were set up to ensure any other cases could be reported. Michael, Rose, and those who made disparaging remarks about dropouts and told her to get out received various penalties, including salary reductions and suspensions, thus closing the incident. Since then, the hotline has received a steady stream of consultations. It's probably something that's bound to happen, not just with Molly and me, but within a company as large as this corporate group. But leaving these unchecked wasn't an option. As vice president, I reminded myself of that. There will always be those who judge people solely by their academic background or titles, believing it to be only natural. Their pride in being highly educated and viewing themselves as winners only further justifies the system of academic elitism in their minds. But just because someone attended a good school doesn't mean they'll excel at their job. Of course, educational background can certainly serve as one criterion for identifying talented individuals. However, many people are unable to pursue higher education due to various circumstances. Simply dismissing potential employees who may have exceptional skills or talent based solely on their academic background, without evaluating them through interviews or assessments, may not be beneficial for the company in the long run. Hey, big bro, what's got you so lost in thought? Oh, nothing. Just thinking I still have a lot to learn. Hearing this, Molly looked at me curiously before breaking into laughter. When I asked what was so funny, she seemed surprised I hadn't heard the rumors. You know, even though I was at the center of all this, you made sure my name wasn't mentioned, right? Of course, it's confidential. It's a large corporate group. Stories from just one of its departments wouldn't reach most people outside that circle, nor would anyone know exactly who was involved. But it was different for me, as I held the title of vice president. Being the grandson of Mr. Olson, my name was widely recognized within the group. It seems that not only the incident but the way it was handled became a widely circulated story across the group companies, complete with embellishments. Big bro is all the buzz around here. They say you're a revolutionary for this company. Thanks to the new support line set up across the company, many more people than expected felt they'd been helped. It seems I'd unknowingly become someone employees respected and appreciated. What's that about? If anything, it's strange that there weren't measures in place before. A big company stuck in its old ways. The fact that you think that way and act on it, that's what makes you an outstanding vice president. Watching Molly laugh as she praised me, I felt, even if only a little, that I was becoming someone who deserved this role. 10 years have passed since then. Despite factional struggles with traditionalists like Michael, I've risen to the position of president. Molly has become the first female department head in the technical division, where she continues to work hard, developing new technologies and bringing numerous patents to the company. No one calls her a high school dropout or incompetent anymore. In fact, most employees are shocked when they hear her background directly from her. However, she never hides her background and often brings it up proactively during training sessions. She then challenges the employees with this thought: having an education and knowledge is certainly an advantage. But those are merely advantages at the starting line. One's true value can only be demonstrated through their future work. Having risen to the role of department head, Molly has now become a true icon within the company. As for Rose, she resigned quickly after Michael lost his influence in the company and went on to marry the president of an IT firm. Whether or not love played a part in that decision, I couldn't say, but it seemed very much like her. Michael himself remains a department head, still working at the company. Gone is his old ambition, replaced by a softer, supportive demeanor. Over time, he's become a mentor who praises and encourages his team, almost like a doting grandfather. It surprised me at first, but when he happily shared, "I have a new grandchild," I realized that family had changed him. My grandfather is still energetic, actively overseeing his role as chairman, though he occasionally drops hints that have nothing to do with work. "When are you going to give me a great-grandchild?" he'll grumble, half joking, half impatient. But that's a blessing we'll just have to wait for. "What's on your mind, darling?" Molly, my wife of 1 year, asked, breaking my reverie. My mother was overjoyed that Molly had truly become like a daughter to her. And the typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues didn't exist in our family. If anything, I sometimes find myself excluded from their conversations as they bond over shared interests. But our life together, the three of us, is filled with happiness. I murmured quietly to myself, "I'm so lucky." And Molly leaned close, whispering in my ear like she was telling a secret. "Yes. The three of us, and by spring, we'll be 4. With that news, I wrapped her in a tight embrace.